Hey everybody, welcome to Right On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today we have a chat with Thomas Pettinelli, producer and director of development at Branded Pictures.
Hey, so I was thinking we can finish up lunch soon. I don't think anybody's gonna show up right now, so we might as well. What's up? I think I know that kid from somewhere.
You know him?
Hey, kid! Oh, I'll be right back. Kid, wait!
Where are you going?
What do you mean you know him? Mike!
Mike!
Go find him.
Okay.
Mike? Mike!
Where'd he go?
You see him? He's gone. Hey, kid! Wait! He's not here.
Dude, I don't know. We should check on Nick.
No. Leave her alone. She was upset earlier.
Is that...
What?
Chris?
Danny?
Chris? Chris, turn on your camera lamp! Chris!
Danny, open the door! Open the door, Danny! No, I don't have the key! Danny, open the door! Wait.
Do you hear that?
Wait.
Thomas and I discussed how he got his start in the industry, his approach to collaborating with filmmakers, producing the hit film Followed, and more. Check it out. Well, I'm here with Thomas Pettinelli. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Tom, you work for a company called Branded Pictures. Can you talk a little bit about the company and your role there?
Yeah, so I joined Branded Pictures about 7 years ago, which is a pretty long time in the entertainment industry. But yeah, our president's done over 50 movies. The Kids Are Right, Jeepers Creepers, Bottle Shock, Piranha 3D. And what was really exciting coming over, I got my start over at Universal, is working as an IP-driven company, working on major titles in various genres for film, TV, and theater. We're a little bit unique in that space. So we're working on a Dance Dance Revolution movie based off the popular video game and doing an adaptation of an Icelandic film, one of my favorite horror movies of the past few years, called Rift, which is a beautiful film I recommend to anybody out there. And we have hopefully some big news coming up soon. We're working on, in the theater space, Soul Train, the musical, and a Maya Angelou show that we're working with her estate. And yeah, I mean, it's just been a tremendous joy to be a part of this company and to be adapting these major titles. And we actually just are also moving into new media to create new IP and new media and work with diverse creators from different spaces to tell their stories as we kind of forge ahead here in the ever-changing entertainment landscape. So it's an exciting time. We have a lot of projects, and yeah, that is sort of what our focus is over at Branded.
And on a, what is your role there on a day-to-day basis? What are you doing?
So I'm a producer and the director of development over there, mostly focused on development, coming up with ideas, bringing in IP that I have a personal sort of connection with, and we're very collaborative over there. So we all get involved in the development of these different titles and really are artist friendly and trying to launch, like I said, whether it's new, podcasts or digital graphic novels or new projects in the new media space, or whether it's to adapt these beloved titles, hiring directors and writers and working with them and creating these titles for different audiences. It's really exciting.
So you mentioned development and, that it's very collaborative. A lot of the people listening to this podcast are screenwriters, whether it's television, film, new media. From your perspective, what are the things you're looking for in a writer that you're going to be collaborating with on a project? What qualities should they have or strive for?
Well, I think it's funny. I've been just talking a lot recently and I've been thinking about this. I think I always hate saying these super vague statements, sort of cliches. But I really more and more think that voice is so important. And I try and tell writers and friends, and don't be afraid of your weird. I embrace, not only as sort of a producer and sort of the development space that I work in, I'm also a writer myself. And I really try and, when I'm thinking about a project, both as a producer or a writer, I think that's what stands out a lot is your weird, is your different, right, we're standing on the shoulders of giants anytime we try and do a new werewolf movie or a new, AI thriller. And as someone who has read countless scripts, not to scare anybody, but the same scripts tend to come up over and over and over again. I think the ones that really stand out was when something is attacked in a very different way and in a singular voice. That's something that you can't mimic or copy. Everyone has their sort of unique take and perspective and on, how to tell this story. So that is something that I often look at if someone has a really special and different vision on an IP or on something that they really find that connects with them in a way that we've never heard before. I think I'm always going to be really excited to kind of break new ground.
And where are you looking for writers and IP and things like that? Is it, do you have certain places you go to that, like, hey, I've had success here before in finding writers or material to develop? Or is it kind of, just constantly changing? What's your strategy?
The truth is, it's a little bit like the Wild West. It can happen in like any, it's not an exact formula. I've had projects and so has my colleagues have had projects where we work with friends, people in the industry who've always wanted to. Agents come to us all the time. Managers come to us. We do look at the competitions. We did a movie with Netflix called Wheelman, which is an action thriller with Frank Grillo. And we discovered Jeremy Rush off the Nickel Fellowship. That was a wonderful script. And we recognized it and spoke with Jeremy, and it probably was one of the fastest development cycles. Netflix totally got it, and we were thrilled to work with them. But yeah, it can sort of come from anywhere. So I know that's not.
No. I
don't mean to give a vague against.
No, not at all. I think that's important for writers to hear that, there's not just one perfect answer bullseye to all of this, that, you really need to be kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. So let's talk about, just to dig a little bit deeper into, what you do and how things operate. You mentioned before the project you did Followed, which I think would be really interesting to discuss, how that went from, something you picked up and developed, where it started through the development process. And then, ultimately last year, in this crazy year, it ends up the #1 movie at the box office. How did, take us from A to Z?
Yeah, that was a bit of a unique project. That's an example where I was working with a good friend, one of my closest friends, Matthew Brubaker, who produced the project. And I had known this was sort of his passion project for a couple years. And that one I didn't do quite as much of the development on as much as the producing. I was there as part of the process and of course gave feedback and even down to casting and fun stuff, the kind of thing that you help your friends out when there are specific projects. But and was on set in one of the creepy hotels down in Cape Town, which it's based off the Hotel Cecil and some of the horrific events that had happened there. So it was a really surreal set to be on because basically all the hotels down there are haunted. And
yeah,
and the film came out beautifully. And so I think one of the things for both writers or young, aspiring producers to come into or any really aspiring producers to come into the industry is people forget how hard distribution can be when it's outside of the studio system, which is something that we have been able to navigate sometimes on some of our titles, have been embraced by the studios. And then other times it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. And you're like, oh God, all right. We have this whole movie and we have investors and we have all these people that are counting on this. But yeah, it came out to be a beautiful movie. And I'm not a huge found footage guy, but just in general, I appreciate the innovation that Project and Paranormal Activity did. But I think what attracted me to this title was, and where I saw it sort of resonating, and thankfully, I think some of the critics picked up on this, was a new way into the found footage genre through influencer culture, through what we're going through as a collective right now, and dealing with how far are some people willing to go for internet fame, and what do you want, and is that real, is that happiness, and how overwhelming it can be, and how misleading, and what that means for your sort of mental health and matters in life. So I love that exploration, taking that like angle of influencer culture and exploring that through paying homage to some of the most horrific and terrifying, sort of events in downtown LA at the Hotel Cecil. And so it's a little bit of a fun, ride there.
And so once you had that, like, as you put it, the movie came out beautifully. From there, what happens? You've got, you mentioned distribution is difficult. So what on like a practical level, what do you do?
So we really came in to sort of grandfather that process, and proud to say, we actually got 5 competing offers on that film at various different distributors who were really excited for it, both for domestic and foreign. So it was a little bit of a mini bidding war there of taking, the best sort of deal, which is, again, there's no roadmap. And there's always sort of, there were certain distributors that were very well known in the horror community and really knew what they were doing sort of digitally. And we went with this company called Global View Entertainment. And, we were able to kind of take the riskiest, but the most exciting for us, which was we were going to do a theatrical release. We were supposed to come out in a few hundred theaters and AMCs all across the country in April of 2020. And we all know how that went. So it was almost absolutely disastrous, actually. And we were freaking out because we're like, oh God, the pandemic, like, is this movie, are we going to get buried? Are we ever going to come out at all? And to their credit, we were able to pivot to the drive-ins over the summer. And that's how we became the #1 sort of new release in the country. And for 2 weeks over the summer, and it was a magical experience. It really was special. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. I mean, that experience is so nostalgic, and for so many of us. But to see a few hundred cars packing this sort of over the summer, especially in the pandemic where people needed to get out and safely, and to have that shared experience with friends in a safe way was, I'll never forget that.
That's really awesome. So when you're, that's a project where, you, like you mentioned, you kind of acted more in a producerial capacity. When you're, straight up developing something and acting more in that capacity, just, kind of what are the things how are you operating on a day-to-day basis with the collaborators you're working with?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a different, it's sort of, it context matters for this. So I think whether it's my idea or one of my colleagues' ideas, and we're sort of early from the inception, it might be a little bit different when we're working with a writer and kind of, we always want to make sure as a good producer that at any stage in the process that you're supporting your creative team's vision, that there's a shared and collective vision. And whether you came up with the idea or the writer did, or a director-writer did, right? I think, though, it's finding like-minded individuals. It's finding a team that, and I've sort of said this many times before, it's finding a team that you understand there's going to be highs and lows. Unfortunately, the development process in traditional media can take years and years and years. It can be quite the harrowing journey. So you want to do it with people who it's a joy to work with, and you can trust, and you can support each other, and you can really work well with. That's actually part of the reason I think it's so exciting to launch some new titles and new media, is you don't necessarily have to deal with the same gatekeepers and deal with years and years of the development process. That's sort of a very exciting thing for us as well, why we're evolving into that space and adding that to what we do. But, it's a bit of a different process when it's, in the case of Riff, like I said, where it's such a personal movie for the filmmaker. And when we first approached Erlinger Thordarson, who I'm going to say his name here because he is going to be in the stratosphere. He's not only do I have the great joy of saying what an amazing colleague he's been, but he's become an incredible friend as well. And he is doing a lot of stuff with Blumhouse and all these different places. So you heard it here first. But yeah, I mean, in that process, we basically said, hey, we understand, like, your movies stunning and, haunting. And if you tell us like take a hike, we will leave it alone. It does not need to be messed with. But we felt like it was such a unique and important perspective for an English speaking audience to kind of, and especially as a, kind of early first or second time filmmaker for Erlinger, he felt like there were some things that he really wanted to be able to do a little bit differently in an adaptation of his own work. And the entire time we've sort of, gone to bat for him. And it's just, and in that case, of course, we want to be additive to the vision and come in with our notes. And it's just also understanding what a personal journey this is for Erlinger, and just trying to, be supportive of that as well.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, giving notes. So that's something, I'm curious about, again, a lot of writers listen to this and, you hear horror stories about executive notes and development notes and things like that. What is your approach to giving notes? And also, what would your advice be to writers for taking notes?
So this is an interesting one. Something I've learned from my mentors through the years. I've had the incredible privilege truly to work with, when I was over at Universal and Sci-Fi, sort of this joint venture between Universal and Sci-Fi called Sci-Fi Films. I got to learn under Mark Stern, who brought in Battlestar Galactica and is sort of the president of the network over there, and a lot of different smart execs and just some amazing teachers for me. And one of the things I've taken away from both my branded team and the places before me is balancing. You don't want to have a note ever where you're putting the pen in the writer's hand and it feels like you're telling them what to write, because no creative wants that. But you also don't want to, if I may, put out the stereotype of the film school snob who's like, this is wrong and that's wrong and this is wrong and these are all, let me just give you a laundry list of the problems, because that's not really, I do believe that shows sort of a bit of someone being green or not knowing how to be supportive of a vision or giving some direction. Right. And so you don't want to be, the cliche is some of these super vague notes, like just make it more fun. It's just not fun enough. I think that's the most hated note of creatives everywhere. But there is some truth to that, right? Like you're identifying something. And I think that's where language and communication can sometimes fail us when we're so overwhelmed with all the different projects we have and all the limited time we have. So when I give notes, I try and identify the issue and then work with a writer to just propose some potential different directions, not even just one, just a few things, and have it conversational and see as we sort of riff together with a creator. And by the way, they might not accept any of the three suggestions and have a better solve and are more clever than I, but I think the idea is to give guidance, to try and be specific as to some of the issues that are happening, but to never feel like you're telling the writer, this is how it needs to be done, because it is supporting that vision. So that's how I really try and go about giving my notes. And
from for the writers, are there certain, I imagine you've had experiences where writers may react poorly to notes, or, what would your advice be as a writer yourself when you're getting notes from a development executive or, whomever, a producer? How would you advise a writer to digest those notes?
Yeah, I think when it comes to as a writer, I think coming from the stance that this is why it's so important early. And I know everyone's so eager to get their work made. I'm guilty as charged, right? Like we all want our work to get made. It's very important to all of us, right? And I think there's a sense of urgency that we all feel. But there have been projects we've absolutely walked away from because it doesn't feel right. Like trust is so important. If you can find a team that you trust early in the process, I think then you understand that everyone's truly trying to make it better. Everyone's truly trying to make this the best thing that it can possibly be. And I think if you understand that, and yes, we're all sensitive, we're all artists, we're all, but I think that goes a really long way, as opposed to, oh, this person's just trying to make a commission off of this, or this person's just trying to make a sale, or this person's trying to change my vision. Are there compromises? of course, there's always compromises in art, no matter what. And I think you need to also take a look at yourself and ask why do I want to work in film versus writing my own novel? That you can self-publish your own. No one's going to stop you, and that's a beautiful thing as well. But in this business, there's going to be compromises. There's going to be things that we all have to deal with. Sometimes we get the same cliched notes from the studio and we're like, oh God, how are we going to make that? We feel the same way, and we're all in it as a team though. And so I think when you have that trust, it's less about your ego. It's less about they don't get it. And it's more about what are other people seeing, and do I trust them that they want this to be the best that it can possibly be as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. You've been at this for a little while now. When did you first know, you wanted to be a writer, you wanted to, work in the industry? Was it something you figured out early on? Did it come later on? What was your journey?
Yeah, I think in high school, I started writing. I was the weirdo that, started writing poetry and, was part of that club, whatever, and just knew I was going to be a writer till the day I died. But ironically, I never intended to be a producer. That was something that I learned sort of later. I went to Emerson College up in Boston and was like, whoa, this is a job that you can do. Half the kids were from the industry, and I was like, oh my God. And so I think for a while, I fully intended to sort of romanticize those Mrs. Parker and the Vicious Circle days of New York and sort of that midnight in Paris sort of bohemian club of artists, and that doesn't exist anymore. Not quite in the same way. And I have a lot of friends in the publishing industry, and people complain about the music industry and the film industry. It's rough. As we know, there's going to be Amazon, Penguin, Random House, one giant corporate, where Bezos tells us what to read and what not to read every day. But I don't want to think about that future. But no, my first job, I started working in internships and, with indie filmmakers that were in New York and doing all this, at MTV. And I was like, what is this weird world? And then my first job out of college was at Universal, was there under Joshua Bonta and Gregory Novak, who were great execs and great teachers and mentors. And I learned sort of what we were talking about earlier. I fell in love with uplifting and participating with the voices of others. That was what was so spectacular. And again, not to keep going back to Rift and Erlanger or something like that, but these personal journeys and these experiences that are so beautiful and haunting and affecting for me, if I can be a part of helping, tell these stories with these various artists and in different ways, and what a joy, what a privilege that is. And so I learned that there's 100 different ways you can be a producer. If you ask, 100 different people what it means to be a producer, you'll get 100 different definitions. And, you can be a creative producer, you can be a writer and a producer and work in that space. And yeah, that's really what I sort of drew me to that. And I've been running in that direction ever since.
You mentioned, how much you enjoy supporting, other creatives and other people's personal journeys. I wanted to talk about Start with 8 Hollywood. You're a mentor in that program. Can you talk a little bit about what the program is and how you got involved in what you do there?
Yeah, it is such an extraordinary program that I'm so lucky to have been a part of. Basically, a little bit of our new initiative. I've been on Twitter for over a decade, but I think I've only started using it a few months ago, given everything going on. And I reached out to a writer on Twitter who's very engaged in that community. She is a rock star, and happy to give a huge shout out to her. Her name is Ariel Relaford, and she does a horror screenwriting podcast herself and is so supportive in that community. And we just hit it off. And she was like, hey, I have this program to mentor basically 8 women of color to at various stages to sort of, whether it's to break into the industry, whether they're successful in one area of the industry, but looking to transition from all different backgrounds. And I was like, where can you sign me up? Please let me be a part of this. And it was an amazing experience. Truly, I was blown away with my mentees, and I actually read from, I don't know, I won't mention names, but I read one of the best, there was a playwright I was working with, in sort of transitioning, and I read one of the best fantasy plays I've ever, and fantasy is such a tough genre, but it was so beautiful. It was some of the best writing I've ever read in that space. And I was like, this is extraordinary. So all of them were so talented, and I just feel grateful to have met them and to be continuing to sort of, hopefully be helpful and be a part of that. And it's so important in our industry, and I could not recommend it more. If anyone is out there listening, please look into Start With 8. Like I said, it's been such a rewarding program for me, and it's something that this industry needs desperately.
Absolutely. Just a quick plug to those listeners. If you are interested in learning more, Final Draft, we have done interviews with the founders as well as other mentors. So search our blog, search our podcast. You'll find some good stuff there. As we wrap up, I just want to ask you one last question. You've been doing this for a little while now. Is there something you've learned along the way you wish you knew when you were first starting out?
Give me a minute on that one.
Okay. That's a big question. It's a big
question. I think that I don't want to just give the generic answer of like patience or something like that, where, meeting, like I said, colleagues and friends who have been in, Cowboys and Aliens was like in development for 11 years and like stuff like that, where you find out these films just are in that process for so long, and really to enjoy the process as it goes, which is so hard to do. It's something that we all lose sight of, but that would sort of be a lie, because now we're trying to, what we're excited about is avoiding that process and sort of launching these narrative driven podcasts or launching these new titles and new media. I think that's a way around this. So, but yeah, I think, taking a step back, yes, I think learning to enjoy the process and the journey and not don't make comparisons, ever. I think that's probably something we've all been told since, we're children or what have you, but it's so hard to really to be a part of that. And, listen, I'm grateful. Part of the reason I jumped over to Branded was because Todd Harris and Mark Markham have their career, like we've just made so much stuff. Like the time since I've been there, it's like at the studios, sometimes you can be in these departments that like do these very specific things, and you're like, oh, I work in the sci-fi. Oh, this is too horror-y. It doesn't really fit our department. Or, oh, we only do $20 million to $60 million features. This is a pilot. You can't do anything with it. So I think that that was really frustrating for me. And so to take a leap into the sort of independent producing, our production company, a little bit more scrappy and a little bit more entrepreneurial. I mean, like I said, we've done two Broadway shows, an off-Broadway hit called Heathers the Musical, which was really extraordinary experience. Done a bunch of movies in my career, and to sort of have some of these great titles, to have been a part of, and even the privilege to be associated in, with the Trial of Chicago 7 and an Oscar nominated film already in my career has been just absolutely super grateful for that. And not to lose sight of all the struggle. Don't let the struggles get in the way of the enjoyment.
Yeah, man, you got to enjoy the process. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Thanks to Thomas Pettinelli for coming on the show. Followed is available for rental right now on VOD platforms. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review. And if you haven't already, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about future episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc. and Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This episode was produced by Kayla Guess with help from associate producer Emma Vranich. Music by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.